Hello and welcome back to the workshop. This episode is dedicated to this. Yes, this is another Werder video. Now in the last one I tried to show you exactly what was going on through the holes here, and quite rightly a number of you said I can't see a thing. So well, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to speak about my favourite gun once again, and generally we aim to please here at Bloke on the Range. So hold on to your hats, it's about to get nerdy. So I've taken it apart just so I can show you details of all the different parts, and perhaps to show you that it's not as fragile as it would at first appear. So first off, let's take the cocking piece and striker. So as you can see, it's quite a chunky piece of metal. Big thick shaft here, as the actress said to the bishop. And very importantly, we have this roller and this stud. So remember these two, they're quite important. Then we have the breech block. Again, quite a chunky piece of metal, chunky trunnions here. Inside we have the firing pin, which is spring bias there, and also very important to the system, this camming surface here and this breech block strut. Another two things to keep in mind for later. Then we have the trigger is nothing special, and then this is the breech block release. Two things to keep in mind here is this hooked surface here and this locking arm up top. Also on the locking arm is a very thin ridge which also plays a part. So when you see the parts from the side, you say, yeah, it looks quite delicate, but actually when you look at the thickness of everything, it has been done in a fairly robust way. Same with the springs on the side. You'd say, well, they're prone to breakage, no problem, but again, they're pretty thick. Right, I'll put this back together and then we'll see how it all works. I may as well do it on screen. Okay, so striker goes in the breech block, goes onto its axis pin, then goes in the side, then the two triggers sliding together, they also slide on to a common axis there. There we have the extractor sharing the spring with the trigger. There we are. And then the two omega springs. Well, one omega spring. I'm going to leave the main spring out because it's going to be much easier to show you how things are happening with this left away. Now also thank you to Deep Pastry and 76 horsepower for suggesting the obvious solution of using a Perspex panel to hold everything in while I explain what's happening. So here we go, here's one I made earlier. Hopefully it's clear enough that you can see what's going on. Right. Here we go. Are you ready? Now you have to imagine that this is pushed in all the time, as it would be against the rim of the chamber. So first thing, the situation we have here would be, in the unfired position would be like this. Breech block down, about. Yay. And the system's at rest. The first thing that we'll do, load the cartridge, obviously, then thumb back the cocking piece. Now that's going to do a number of things which you have to watch. The roller is going to push on the camming surface that I pointed out earlier, which is going to tilt the block up. This stud here is going to push the the hooked surface here up, causing the release trigger to pivot on this axis here, which is going to cause the locking lever to move down and underneath the strut, and the little ridge on the top makes sure it doesn't over travel. So let's just do that. Oh. There, hear that click? That's the first notch. Put it all the way back. There we go. Sear is engaged into the normal groove and it's ready to fire. So here we are, cocked and locked. The roller has finished its travel, pushing up the breech block to its fully raised position so that the firing pin is directly facing the cartridge primer. At that raised position, the locking lever has slipped underneath the strut and locked it out, and because the striker here is being held in position by the sear, the stud holding the release trigger effectively locks it out. So we can't drop the block without dropping the striker. So basically you have to drop the hammer and then empty, should you need to unload without firing. So the next sequence is to fire the action. So trip the sear, striker will move forward, hit the firing pin will do its job. So let's put it in that position. Pretend this is fully back, and then let's fire. Okay, obviously here the block wobbled a bit because it doesn't have this spring to hold it in place. But the most important thing, notice, is that the striker moved, but the front trigger here and locking arm didn't. That's because it's locked in position due to the pressure from the breech block, obviously with the spring in place here, and therefore it doesn't move when the stud here drops as the striker rotates. So that then the fired position, and all that leaves is to drop the breech. And that is simply, I'm going to trip this forward. You can see it's already starting to move there because it's not under spring tension. When I do that, that frees the energy stored in the spring that's back here. That's going to expand. This is going to force the breech block down violently, and this lip here is going to smack the bottom of the extractor and fling the cartridge out. So obviously this won't work because the spring is not there, so you have to imagine this. So put that in place like so, trip that, down it comes, hits the ejector, and then springs back to a neutral point. So you've got that flipping action when it's released, and then the system comes back to rest. So I'll try and show you the before and after without this and the spring in place. Just go over it again. So there we are, everything's in place. So I'll just go over it one more time. Thumb the striker back, roller contacts the camming surface, pushes the block up. I can show you a little bit how that works. There we go, see? Like that. As we do that, the stud here pushes up against the back of this hook surface, makes the locking arm pivot down, and underneath the strut of the breech block, and locks the block up in a raised position. The sear will engage in the notch here and lock the system out. So I'll just put this back on. Cock it and very carefully prise it off. Okay, so with it cocked, I've taken the cover off and replaced it with the Perspex one, so now you can hopefully see the whole thing working. So now we fire. There we go. As you can see, trigger moved forward and this stayed put. It's effectively being sandwiched in place due to this spring here, which is tilting, forcing it down against the blocking arm. And now all remains is to drop the breech. So I'll put this back in its usual place, and there we go. So thank you for watching. I hope that clarifies how the Werder mechanism works. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And see you next time, hopefully on the range once spring arrives.